so my name is Simon Cassidy, and I'm the ring announcer for Insane Championship Wrestling.
So you were just saying before you've been in with the company for, it was...
Yep, so I've been with ICW for about 11 years now. I think before that technically I originally came in as quite an unsuccessful backstage interviewer. Not my finest tenure. And then filled in one evening. I was meant to be temporarily filling in for our old ring announcer who was pregnant and she was going off on maternity leave. But there was another MC who was meant to take over long term. So I stood in for one night. Apparently it went well. Because technically I think I'm still covering maternity leave. So so it's been interesting.
Yeah. Did you have any roles in the wrestling business before? You mentioned you were a backstage ring announcer. Is it a backstage interviewer even? Sorry.
So I think as you'll find with most people in wrestling, I had a brief unsuccessful tenure as a trainee.
Yeah.
I trained for about 6 months in a school that's no longer there called Area 52, which was the Scottish Wrestling Alliance training school, which was essentially a unit in an industrial estate. Did that for about 6 months, and one day hurt my back a little bit, and just went, nah, I don't think this is for me. I don't think you're looking for a 5'8" blonde Scotsman, so maybe let's just call it there. But from there, I was doing journalism at university, and ended up myself and the now retired DCT started up a podcast and a website called Wrestle Shark, and basically just kind of made a lot of connections with people in the companies. Kind of did it what we would say was the right way. Kind of emailed, introduced ourselves. Kind of, as you no doubt know, kind of got in just kind of started building connections, going to shows, meeting people, and then one thing led to another, and ended up here now.
Yeah. So you've seen it all then in terms of wrestling, kind of down, being in the kind of British wrestling business throughout the 2010s, where we've kind of seen a quite successful and also tumultuous period. What are your thoughts generally? Because obviously we've seen a big rise from the mid 2010s in particular. You had, in ICW, we had the Hydro show, you had little companies popping up where there previously weren't, and big names coming to wrestle here, and we've also seen that kind of as the downturn. What do you think is responsible for that, other than obviously the kind of the obvious pandemic?
I do think that even pre-pandemic, I think the scene was starting to. I wouldn't necessarily say dip, but it definitely wasn't the level of popularity it had been even just a few years earlier. Because we went from the SEC, which was 4,000 people, but then went to the Hydro the next 3 years in a row. But I would say even off the back of that, you did start to see there was signs that it maybe wasn't as hot a ticket as it was, and I then do think to go from that then straight into COVID where you had nothing, I do think really kind of cooled off a lot of things. And obviously there was kind of, so there was a tiny fly. But obviously you then did have things like kind of speaking out and how various things were handled by kind of some individuals. And I think in general there was just a sense of some people just maybe kind of stepped away from the scene. But to be honest, I think you're starting to see quite a lot of that come back now. Obviously it's a kind of new team at ICW, kind of new era, as we keep saying. And I definitely think there's signs that it's starting to kind of build back to something quite special. I think one of the few upsides to the COVID era essentially was, because obviously at the time we had to deal with the WWE network and managed to get the kind of go ahead to do kind of closed door tapings, and I think purely through kind of necessity, there was quite a lot of stars that I think are starting to kind of really come into their own now that I don't think would have been there or kind of had that platform had it not been for that kind of necessity of we have to provide X number of hours television per week. Who are we going to fill that with? Because obviously you couldn't bring people up from down south, you couldn't fly people in from kind of overseas. You had to kind of use the tools that were available to you. So I do definitely think there was some kind of positives from that you're starting to see the benefits of now. But I think probably a rebuilding phase is where I was I think not just us, I think the scene in general, it seems to be in that kind of mindset, and it's quite exciting to see.
Yeah, so obviously you're a ring announcer. That's your role currently. You've role for a very long time. Bit of an iconic voice in the when you walk in. No, you are. You absolutely are. So kind of you've voiced over you've done the ring announcing some big shows across the years. So kind of how is that? What is the experience like doing that? Like in terms of It's not just announcing the guy coming down to the ring. You've got to pass. You've got to sell. You basically got to sell the wrestler coming down to the ring.
Yeah.
So how do you get into that? What is the kind of
for a start? I don't. For me, there's not really another buzz like it. What's quite funny is I've obviously been doing this a very long time. I hate watching any footage of myself from maybe before 2016 onwards, but I thought it was amazing. And I'd done all these shows, and I generally look back at it now, and it's almost like, you were quite bad. Like, why did no one tell you? Like, why did no one like, what are you doing? So it's almost like, I think it was after the first Hydro, I kind of flipped a switch, which was, truth be told, I took quite a lot of inspiration from like Bruce Buffer, who does UFC, who's very kind of like, it just does his spins and his jumps and all that sort of, like, I kind of started channeling a little bit more of that, and also started paying a lot more attention to like my enunciation and everything I was saying, and just trying to vary my cadence a little bit more. And I genuinely find that since then I actually enjoy it more, which is bizarre. But I still think in terms of just announcing people, the ring, like, essentially my job is to make them sound like $1 million and then disappear. Which I remember, I think the best compliment I've ever got was Mick Foley, just to kind of drop a name there. When he did our show at the SEC, I then did a kind of like guest announcer spot for his comedy show the next night. And he basically said to me, he said, really good job. He said, you made everyone sound amazing, and then I completely forgot you existed. And he said, and that's exactly what the job should be. And I'm a kind of a big proponent of that. That's kind of how I still try and do things, like
model it.
Yeah, like make everything seem big and special in the moment, and especially in the main events, like really go for it. And then no one should be paying any attention to you after that. Like, get her, go away.
Yeah.
But
have you done big announcing elsewhere apart from ICW? Have you helped across the British scene, or?
Yeah. So for years, I basically did most companies in Scotland. And kind of actually, I did a little bit. I've done one show with TNT years ago, which was great fun. But to be honest, in the last couple of years, kind of especially with kind of post-COVID, with the scene kind of changing and things like that, like I have kind of narrowed it down a little bit more. It's more, it does tend to be kind of more ICW and Blockbuster and a couple of other little shows kind of here and there. But in the last couple of years, it's mainly been ICW.
So how have you noticed the change since it was the beginning of the year, wasn't it?
So it was the beginning of the year. I think it's such a radical change as well, because I think to talk to anyone from kind of 2012, 2013, 2016, if you said to them Mark Dallas is no longer running ICW, it would seem mind-blowing. Like, I think for a very long time there was just a kind of belief that if Dallas wasn't at the helm, there is no company, because for years it was just his, doesn't I always say, the kind of spark of insanity that he brought was in many ways the kind of driving force of. I would genuinely argue that the British boom started with ICW. I think we started getting these big crowds, became cool. We got the BBC documentary, there was a kind of popularity, and it was only after that you started seeing other companies having similar kind of success. I very much believe that kind of boom started in Glasgow. Not to take away from what anyone else did, but I think and again, I think a lot of that was only possible kind of because of the vision that Dallas had. So to go from that to he's now not involved at all. He decided to step away. What legacy he's left behind, but decided to step away. But obviously, you still have kind of Duncan Gray, who's for years been the kind of the silent partner, I suppose, is the kind of best way to view it. You've got Scott Reed, who, funnily enough, started off wrestling at Wrestle Shark, along with myself and DCT, but he's been working behind the scenes for years, and is now kind of heading up that kind of creative role. You've got Jester, who I can't think of someone more synonymous with ICW than Jester, and you've got, again, Thomas Kells, who's been working very much behind the scenes for years, now getting to that kind of a bit more of a kind of key role. It's strange because it's the same but different, if that makes sense. So it's the same company, and the product you actually see going out kind of in front of fans every week, I think it still feels quite similar. I think there's just kind of fresher faces, and it's like maybe a slightly different take on things, and things are maybe going in angles that they wouldn't have gone before. Things are maybe taking a slightly different turn. But I think it's very interesting to see how other people will kind of mould, interpret, and kind of shape things. I genuinely think there is, again, starting to see a kind of uptick in people that are interested, because we were essentially building from scratch, because a lot of the big names that kind of made the company are either no longer involved or get signed to WWE or just aren't still around as much anymore. So you did have to kind of take this kind of group of people that kind of stepped up during the COVID era, and it's now gone from you're no longer placeholders, you're now the talent. You are the people on the show. So it's really exciting to see, and to see the kind of little changes of people like starting to kind of find their confidence and find their feet a bit and becoming kind of getting into that like main event spot. And like we see the run shoot throughs before the shows and things. Kind of Scott Thomas suggested will very much tell people like, you know, this is your chance to go out there and show people what you can do. So go and show them, like put them out there, because if you don't, you never know if you get this opportunity again. And to see people kind of taking that ball and running with it, I think it's very, very exciting.
Yeah, you mentioned how ICW was kind of the spark of it in terms of the boom, and we for what it's worth, as somewhere not involved in ICW, we actually agree. We've obviously done a bit of research going into this. I'd probably identify like those kind of ICW shows in the early 2010s as kind of a basis from which it kind of began. What was the atmosphere like at those shows? You must have had at least a sense that, you know, in the kind of like 2013, was there a sense that something was happening here? Like,
God, yes. I think a lot of people tend to view the kind of like the SEC and the Hydro and things as the kind of moment that people went, oh, there's something special here. For me, it happened much earlier than that. So within 6 months of me ring announcing, became involved in ICW, and we then announced a show called Dave's Not Here Man that had Sabu and Colt Cabana on it, and it was kind of one of the first times there was kind of big international names on a show. And it was meant to be a venue that's now shut called Studio 24. It then had to move to the Edinburgh Picture House just because demand was that high. And it was the first time we sold 1,000 tickets. And walking into that room and that number of people packed in and like hanging from the rafters and screaming like, I see Thomas. Like, for me, that was the night I was like, oh, this could be something special. And it was almost like from that moment on, it just kind of went from strength to strength to strength to strength. And I think even anyone that went to the shows in the garage in kind of 2012, like, it was a different animal. Like, I remember the first ICW show I went to, it was BT Gunn and Jack Jessel in the main event. And the night before, I'd been at a family show to watch it. I was like, oh, that's good, that's quite a big kind of crowd. And then I went to ICW the next night, and you could not compare the two. It was such a different atmosphere, and it was just cool. Like, there was just something there. You were like, for years I remember thinking, why is this not on TV? Like, if you point a camera at this and let people see it, like, I do not understand why this is not on television. I still believe that to this day. I'm never really sure why it's so hard to get wrestling on TV in the UK.
It is difficult, isn't it? Like World of Sport, we had that pilot really didn't take off, did it? You had go on, sorry.
World of Sport, I think, was a really, really cool idea, and I really wish it had worked and kind of taken off. For me, I think if it ever did come back, I think the issue was, I don't think there were enough people behind the scenes, behind the camera, from a wrestling point of view. I think it was very much produced as just a TV show. Like, I think if you look at the first few episodes of it, the number of cuts would make Kevin Dunn go, that's a bit much. And I think if they'd had someone in it with that more kind of holistic view of how a wrestling show should be put, I think that would have helped. It might still not have kind of kicked off, but I still think there was something special there. And to this day, I still think there is a serious market for it that's just not being tapped.
I mean, if you look at the popularity of how AEW is, since they've popped up, they're huge here.
Oh,
you know, the Wembley show, the way people talk about it, it's definitely the case, isn't it?
Exactly. You look at AEW, you look at like Clash of the Castle a few years ago, like the audience is there. I think especially with how what wrestling seems to be kind of becoming again at the moment, I think it's definitely there. I think it's just finding. I've always said the initial run of ICW was like lightning in a bottle. Like, I don't think you'll ever capture that. It was the right time, the right people, the right kind of atmosphere and ambience. Like, I'm never convinced you'll capture that again and go back on that incredible run. Because it's basically 3 years it went from a few hundred people in the garage to 6,000 plus in the Hydro. That's incredible for an over 18s product. And I think that's something that also gets overlooked. Like, that's not like families and friends, that's purely adults coming to watch it. So I'm not sure you'll ever get quite that hot streak and that run again, but different doesn't mean worse. I definitely think there's an opportunity to grow it in a way that it's something really cool and really special. And okay, maybe you don't do the Hydro. You might. I think
sustainable too.
I think there is definitely a way to do it that you can run it and it's consistent and it's cool and there's a product there. So I think people want to see it and the talent's there, the mindsets are there, the venues are there. It's just getting to them. And I think obviously we're here in Newcastle tonight. Like Newcastle's always been an ICW city. Like for years, it was so cool when you came down here. Like it felt like Glasgow.
Yeah.
Like
we have an affinity for the
yeah.
for the Glaswegian, the Scottish, and the North East.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's, I think even things like coming back here kind of semi-regular again. So obviously we're nearly sold out here tonight. I think it's the little steps like that, like kind of reminding people, hey, we're still here, by the way.
Yeah.
I think it's just kind of steps like that, and who knows, maybe start touring again. Maybe London's not that far away. We did Cardiff after last Clash of Castle, and it was sold out. Like the audience is still there. I think it's now just kind of getting back to let's go and get them.
So we're asking everyone this is going to be the most generic wrestling question in the world. What kind of grabbed you initially? What was it that, as a kid, I assume as a kid, as in most people, maybe not. What was it that like got you hooked at wrestling? What was it that like you saw and like, wow, that is that's for me.
So I remember, I think I must have been 3 or 4 years old. But I remember one of my first memories was my brother convinced my mum to let us rent WrestleMania from Global Video. And again, in my head, I was a child. I thought, this must have just happened a couple of days ago. But it was WrestleMania with Hulk Hogan versus the Ultimate Warrior. And I vividly remember my brother being appalled that I wanted the Ultimate Warrior to win. Because I just saw the colours, the lights, the music, everything was so cool. And he was horrified at the idea that someone's going to beat Hulk Hogan. There was something about that. It was just, I think it was the kind of the lights, the music, everything about it, the violence. Like, I was hooked ever since. And I remember hearing people saying, like, they'll grow out of it. I'm 35. So, the phase is not a phase, Mom. It's thrown around a lot these days, but I think we're getting past that a little bit.
It applies definitely, to say the least, yeah. Oh no, great, that's great, mate.